Hi everyone, welcome. We'll just give it a minute here as people join. Welcome everyone. I'm just giving it just a minute to let people join the webinar before we get started. All right, we will get started as people continue to join. Hello everyone, my name is Teresa Donahue. I am Brand Engagement Marketing Manager here at Volusion, and I want to welcome you here today for our webinar, Cultivating a Culture of Engagement. Just a couple housekeeping notes before I turn it over to your amazing hosts. We will have a Q&A session at the end of today's webinar, so be sure to submit your questions in the question box at the bottom of your screen and anytime during the webinar. And also, we will be sending a follow-up email to all registrants tomorrow afternoon with the recording of the webinar and answers to all your questions in a hard copy form. So keep an eye out for that. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'll hand it over to you, Sandra and Rachel.
Thanks, Teresa. Welcome to Creating a Culture of Engagement. We're super excited to have you join and hope what we share with you will be relevant and provide you with some really good takeaways, regardless the size of your organization. The agenda that we wanted to talk about today and just kind of share with you briefly is we'll do a quick intro, introduce and share a little bit about myself and Rachel, your presenters today, and then we'll go right into our core values. From there, we'll share some of our best practices in terms of how we apply our core values into other areas within our organization, such as recognition, hiring, and then how we measure all of this, and then we'll go into Q&A. So let's get started. Your presenters today will be myself, Sandra Nguyen, and Rachel Mahan. We both bring a combined 30 years here at Volusion with a really strong passion of doing all things culture and employee engagement related. So this is a topic that we're super passionate about. So we're excited to kind of share with you all the things that we've learned throughout the years of Volusion. A little bit about Volusion. We are located here in Austin, Texas, and we have Volusioniers all over, but mainly here in Texas. We were founded in 1999, and we have over 50 years of e-commerce experience. We're super proud of being recognized for being a top workplace and the best places to work. So we thought, how to kind of share with you what would make the most sense in terms of where to start. So we start with our foundation, which is our core values and our culture code. And this is what truly drives our culture and how we do things here at Volusion. I know sometimes you may not know where to start, as it seems really daunting to try to put your culture in writing. So we hope to simplify it for you and share with you what we did and what worked for us and what helped us establish our core values today. Our core values are the internal compass and truly what drives our decisions. We refer to them daily, and we do all that we can to kind of keep it at the forefront of our organization, as well as doing as much as we can to tie it in with the rest of how we do things. So like I said, I understand it can be overwhelming when thinking about where to start in creating your core values. So we simplified the process and wanted to share with you just some really big steps in terms of what has helped us in defining our core values. What we did was we really all kind of got into a room, all the senior leaders got into a room, and we asked ourselves, what is important here at our company and what is unique about working here? It didn't just take one day. It took many days. But throughout this process, what we did is we wrote down all the answers that came to mind. It didn't matter what it was. And we would put it on a sticky note and we put it all throughout the room. From there, we organized our kind of theme, our core values list, and we found a pattern, we found a theme. And then once we did that, we looked up the groups that we created. We essentially moved the sticky notes all throughout the room, and then we would create groups from there. From those groups, we were able to choose a keyword or concept that really summarized each group. And then we defined our core values using those words. And the key thing here is using your own words. We like to call it volusionizing it, because we know kind of how our team operates, the words that would make sense to them. Once we did that, we reviewed with the rest of our leadership team very collaboratively. We were really wanting to seek everyone's feedback throughout this process because it was important for them to really have a hand in that. And it wasn't just words that we thought would resonate, but we actually took their feedback into them. So from there, we came away with our core values, which you see here. And we're super proud of this. This didn't just happen overnight. It went through many iterations to get it to where you see here. And it also evolved into an acronym, TEACH. So our core values are transparent, effective, adaptable, collaborative, humble, and founder. And from there, we defined each one that we're sharing with you here. So what's next? You have these core values, you've shared it with the organization. What we found is for us to continue to really make it our DNA, we had to make it visible and use it as a guide to everything we did. For example, tying it into recognition, which Rachel will be sharing with you now.
Thank you, Sandra. Recognition. So employees like to be recognized. We all like to be recognized. Recognition helps employees feel valued and that they're contributing to the overall success of the company, gives a sense of security, and helps motivate individuals and teams to do great work. So what a better way to recognize employees than by tying them into the company core values? And by tying core values with recognition, it is beneficial for adoption and to keep them top of mind. So when an employee is recognized for living out a core value, whether in a private or public setting, that experience will really encourage them to adopt that value and keep it top of mind for the future. And then moving into the next slide, I would like to share a few ways that we have found recognition to be meaningful at Volusion. So first, through daily and weekly recognition. So this can be done virtually or in a physical office. So virtually, it can be shared through company-wide communication channels. This could be as simple as a company-wide text, if it's a smaller company, or through an email. And then Slack is also a common tool that we use at Volusion. So if you're using Slack or a similar tool, you could designate a certain channel for core value recognition. For example, we have a channel that we call the Kudos channel where employees can give a shout out and include core values exhibited with a hashtag. For example, I could say a shout out to Sandra for jumping in to help with a marketing project, hashtag collaborative. And so those are just some virtual examples. And then for a physical office, and it's great if you can combine both, but a designated area in the office for shout outs. This could be a whiteboard, a wall to display sticky notes, or maybe even a TV with a slideshow loop. We actually started many years ago by using a simple corkboard in the break room for employees to just post for everyone to see as they walked through. So just simple sticky notes in the office. So it can be so simple and have such a huge impact, and will encourage others to do the same as they come by and see the shout outs listed. And then next is ongoing conversations. From hiring to one-on-ones and quarterly or annual conversations, constantly evaluate how individuals are excelling in companies' core values. So this goes beyond just productivity in their role. It's an important emphasis on how well they are living out each core value. For example, in a one-on-one, you could share with an employee a way that you see them displaying a core value. So you could say, thank you for being adaptable this week by helping our team knock out a specific project for being adaptable. And so that's an example of ongoing conversations. And then finally, annual awards. So give out an annual award for each core value. You could also do this quarterly, whatever works best and makes most sense for your team. So for our annual awards, we have a company-wide nomination for employees to nominate fellow employees via a form for each core value. We then have an in-person award ceremony to present each winner with a physical award. And we also display pictures and names of all the nominees along with the nominations for each award recipient. So this is really meaningful for each award recipient along with the person who submitted a nomination for them. So these are just a few of many ways that recognition can be tied into core values. And now I'm going to pass it on to Sandra to share how we tie core values into hiring.
So we realized that core values kind of organically became a part of our hiring process. But, through that, we wanted to make it more formal. So to tie that in, what we did was essentially found out that kind of understanding the incorporation of questions based on core values truly do help strengthen our culture through a more consistent approach in evaluating core value alignment with our potential hires. What we did was we really looked at each of our core values. We worked collaboratively to come up with questions for each one and came up with an interview guide that we would share with our interview team to ensure that we're consistent in evaluating every candidate based on every single one of our core values that we shared earlier with you. And so from there, we really were able to derive additional data points for the interview team to incorporate into the decision-making process. I do want to be clear that this isn't just the only thing that we looked for in terms of hiring, but it was definitely an integral piece of us whenever we interviewed and made decisions to hire. So for example, on the next slide, the founder core value. Our core value is the founder focus value. And to ensure that we were asking these questions to really help us evaluate how each candidate exemplified this core value, we created an interview guide based on it, and we shared it with the entire organization. So for example, a question that was based upon our founder core value is, give us an example of a new idea you suggested to your manager or team within the last 6 months, and describe the steps you took to implement your idea. So like you see here, that question really is part of our founder core value. And then we also share the response that we're looking for so that each of our interviewing team members know what to look for, and then have a scorecard based upon how the candidate responds to that. It did take a bit of time to kind of come up with the questions, but once you did that, that's kind of your template for all the interviews moving forward. So the next piece is measuring engagement, which he's going to talk about, but it's really a critical piece of our culture in terms of how we measure what we put forth. So Rachel, I'll give it back over to you.
Thank you. So we have found that it is very helpful to survey often and to seek feedback. So to help measure employee engagement, we have found it very helpful just to survey employees consistently. And so by surveying them consistently, we can get a pulse on very specific areas of engagement. And also, when we first started, we would send out survey via Survey Gizmo. And as you can see, there are many free survey tools that you can utilize as well. But as this became a very consistent part of our culture, we invested in a survey tool called Office Vibe. And what's unique about Office Vibe is it looks at 10 different key metrics, such as happiness, relationships with managers, wellness, and so forth. And so next, I'll share a survey questions. So types of survey questions that can help provide the end goal of getting real feedback. So the first one is quantitative. So these are the types of questions that are easy to group response for making a quick analysis. So like multiple choice, false, yes and no, and then opinion scales. And then an example of a quantitative question could be, on a scale of 0 to 10, if you had new ideas for your organization, what would the chances be that you would share them? And then for qualitative questions, another type of question would be open-ended to obtain more detailed information on a specific topic. So an example of that type of question would be, what makes you comfortable in your work environment? And then also over the years, we have determined that there are a lot of best practices. And so we wanted to highlight a few for you that have been pretty critical for us. First one is timing is crucial. We have found that Friday at 4 p.m. is probably not the best time to send out a survey. However, a good potential time could be 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. Everyone's their favorite cup of coffee or tea and have gotten settled in for the day or the week. Another best practice is the option to provide anonymous feedback. Over the years, we have found that participation increased when we provided an option for employees to share completely anonymously. They knew they could share without any retaliation. And then secondly, when our employees started sharing with us, we improved on what they were asking, and we were able to share more and more and found them sharing more and more. And it wasn't just a black hole. So we read each one, came up with solutions, and shared in a visible way, which actually ties into our next practice, and that is being prepared to receive raw feedback. So we want to share that a lot of times we'll send out questions, but we do need to be prepared to listen to that feedback and to make changes and to not take it so personally, but just to see it as subjective and make changes that way. And then finally, share responses and solutions in a timely manner. So this will help build trust and encourage future engagement. So a lighthearted example of this is a few years ago, we had created a cereal bar in the office, and we quickly discovered that there are a lot of different favorite cereals, and everyone has their favorite, right? Along with their favorite type of milk. So we received a lot of feedback about what employees would like. And so we added the requested cereal and milk to the rotation. And even though it was something so simple, we showed that we listened, we made changes, and had a lot of happy employees enjoying a cereal bar. And so next up, after we've gone through the types of questions and best practices, we also want to share about a Net Promoter Score. So this is another critical piece of data for us. And so you may be familiar with Net Promoter Score, NPS. So by adding this for employees, it's eNPS. And so it measures employees' willingness to recommend your organization as a good place to work and whether they're engaged and enthusiastic about their work. So an example question for this would be, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend our organization as a place to work with others? And then based on that example, based on those questions, there are essentially 3 buckets that determine whether they're a promoter, they're neutral, or a detractor. And then the way that eNPS is configured is the percentage of promoters minus the percentage of detractors. And so we look at this because it really tells a lot about the sentiment of our organization and in real time, which is the most crucial. So this is just a way that we measure engagement. And in closing, Sandra will share with you some key takeaways from our time.
Thanks, Rachel. So key takeaways. So with all that we share, we thought it'd be really good to summarize the key points from our webinar. Defining core values into your own words. This is so important because in order for an organization to really adopt these core values, it has to be words that really resonate with them. And you know your organization the best. Tying core values into recognition. It's really imperative that you recognize based on core values because it really drives those behaviors home. And then incorporating hiring questions based on core values. This helps you be able to hire the right people. Survey often to gain feedback and insight. And then just remember, one size doesn't fit all. There's really no right or wrong way to do this. But what we wanted to share with you what worked with us. Thanks again for your time. We hope what we shared was valuable to you, and we'll hope open it up for Q&A. So for questions, we already have 2 questions. The first one is, do you have any suggestions for how to go about informing and introducing a culture code to existing employees? Question, and I'm happy to try to answer that one. I would say, like we shared earlier, once you kind of have your core values in a thought, then you can adopt what we call a culture code. And how you can do that is sharing that in a public platform and even asking for feedback on that. So then having really employees having some sort of feedback on that, we would have a much better adoption. And so we share that in kind of a town hall type of style meeting, open it up for an informal conversation. And from then on, creating it so that it's very visible in everything we did. When we had meetings, we would always put our core values and culture code up first, linking it to that wherever we can. That was really what helped us sharing that across the company in multiple ways and times as well. Thanks for that question. The second question we had was, besides virtual recognition, do you have any other ideas for engaging remote workers? Because we definitely live in kind of a remote setting these days. And Rachel would be wonderful in answering that question.
Thank you. That is a really great question, and one I'm very passionate about as we have transitioned, over the last few years in doing a lot more things in a remote environment. And so I think one that I would say is just for individual teams would be to really have, our team has done weekly huddles. And I think that's a really great way to just start and have an icebreaker question. So you get to know each other in a really laid back way. Highly recommend having the cameras on. I know that may be a given, but I just think that that's something that's so crucial, since in that remote environment, we're missing so much of that in-person experience. So having cameras on and just asking an icebreaker question and getting to know each other in a weekly cadence. Some of our teams even meet daily. And so just starting there. Also, there can be on a team building. So you could do, maybe it's, we've had teams do like tea time or happy hours, lunches together, just a way that we try to just think of things that maybe if you've been in an office before, of like how to bring that remote. What is the best way? Do we enjoy team lunches around a table? Well, how about we each grab our lunch and get on the screen together. And then another thing is like company-wide, you could do, we've done trivia, so team trivia for fun days. We've done, there's so many free games out there, so you could do games just to kind of break the ice and get to know each other, so that when you're getting to know each other in a lighthearted environment, then when there are challenges on the team or really hard projects you need to work on, you've already had that time together in a laid back setting. So it's, you're going to be more likely to be on each other's team, so to speak, and have each other's back and really work through that project together. So really great question. Honestly, it's something I could probably talk about for hours and hours because I'm very passionate about it, but those are just a few ways that I think engagement can be done remotely.
Great, thanks for sharing. Those are some great ideas, Rachel. Doesn't look like we have any other questions. So at this time, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you all for joining us today. We hope that you learned some great tips on elevating your culture and really getting your employees engaged. Thank you so much, Sandra and Rachel, for your time today. And just as a reminder, keep an eye out for that email tomorrow, which will include the recording of today's webinar, so you can access it at any time. And we'll also include the questions and the answers that happened in our Q&A session today. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.